Thieves is regarded as one of the best zero build players in the world, but what makes him so good? Well, today I'm gonna answer that. I will dive inside his mind in a 15 elimination zero build solo win and cover everything that he does that makes him a lethal zero build fighter, from the way he fights, the loadout he carries, and much more. To begin with, he starts his games in a very similar way as I do myself. He likes to land at the spot southeast of the dojo. There's a slurp truck, 12 chests spawned, an elemental chest, a chance of a typhoon blade, and a launch pad he uses to rotate over to the dojo. He is contested by one other player that lands inside of the cave. He grabs whatever weapons he can find and instantly pushes that player. He has a very aggressive playstyle. He opted to not pop the slurp truck before going into the cave, as he found minis and wanted to push in as soon as possible, giving the other player less time to loot. And because he was so quick, he caught the player off guard and eliminated him without any issues. One thing that separates Thieves from a lot of other players is that he generally doesn't seem to go for any sneak plays. He rather relies on his movement and fast decision making to be one step ahead of the opponent. For example, if it were me, I would have popped the slurp truck, try to find a shotgun, and sneak through the underground area to limit the chances of being hit. But because Thieves plays so fast and makes his decisions without any hesitation, he's very difficult to go up against, and while his playstyle has some flaws, if done correctly, he is able to finish fights so fast that he rarely has to worry about a third party. And now he has what I believe is his ideal loadout: a sentinel pump, a scoped AR, a big pot for heals, and a double movement. So he has everything he needs to push the dojo. He hits the launch pad to rotate over, and he's able to find a player and crack him, but the other player having shockwaves makes it difficult to chase, and he instantly goes for the boss even though there could be others around. And why would he do this? Aura. Okay, but really, he has a blade, he cracked one player there, and even though this POI is ratty, he doesn't want to sit there and play ring around the rosy. He lets the information come to him, as he plays aggressive because he's very good about getting out of situations, especially with the movement he has in his inventory. Surely, a player does sneak up, and he sees that on his visual cues, and he instantly pushes out to eliminate the player. He uses the blade dash to jump over his head, and takes his time to line up a good shot, hits a shot, and instantly dashes again and repeats the process, dashing in a way that breaks the opponent's camera, making himself very difficult to hit. While he seemed to never stop moving in that situation, he made sure to line up his shots because that movement is useless if you're not hitting the player for a lot of damage. As he heals up, another player shows up, and yet again he utilizes the blade to dash and constantly change directions and hit some shotgun shots. As he finishes up the fight, he could have been third party, but because he fought so fast, by the time a third party shows up, he is ready to fight yet again. He was able to finally eliminate the boss, and now he's ready to dominate the rest of the lobby. As he moves around the map, he spots a player that throws down a bunker. He uses the void to close the distance, and as soon as he lands, he instantly switches to the blade to prevent being pre-fired. And then again, uses the blade to dash around and constantly change directions, forcing the player to readjust their aim. And in this fight, you notice how much he pays attention to where the player is looking. When he notices the player is aiming in to where he's at, that is exactly when he times his dash. On top of that, in that fight, you'll notice he not only moved side to side, but he opened up the fight by going upwards. Side to side movement is great, but can be very predictable, so when using the blade, try practicing your vertical jumps as well. But as always, no matter how much Thieves moves around, he always takes his time to line up his shots to hit a lot harder, and the way he lines up his shots so well is by using something called centering. This is a skill that is very simple. Games like CSGO, Valorant, and many first-person shooter games use. What you are doing is putting your crosshair where you expect the opponent to be. So when Thieves is dashing, he's trying to pre-aim the area where the opponent is, so he can hit shots much easier. Bad centering would mean you're simply moving without thinking of where your opponent is, forcing you to have to flick, which may look flashy and impressive if you hit your shots, but your accuracy simply goes down, so keep this in mind as you try to improve your aim. Speaking of aim, the next elimination, his accuracy is spot on because he does something with his aim that many others don't seem to do, including myself. Instead of holding down the shoot button, he is single tapping his AR. Each shot deals a very good amount of damage, and this makes it very easy to control the recoil and have the ability to adjust for every shot that he takes. Now, if you're fighting close to mid-range with an AR, I recommend just spraying since it's easier to hit shots at that range. But when using an AR for long range, single tapping can be very helpful for your accuracy. In the next fights, it's a rinse and repeat of his blade movement and proper shotgun centering, but there's one thing I have noticed that I find to be different from the rest. He has not popped into a single vehicle up to this point and has exhausted his blade. Many pros and content creators like myself love using the car for cover and mobility around the map, and he does end up getting in a car, but why does he opt to not use a car more often often throughout the game. Well, honestly, it could be for a number of reasons. He may like the idea of not being heard around the map, especially with the fact that he has a medallion he's marked on the map. So driving around in a vehicle would make it even easier to spot him. Here he picks up another elimination as he single taps his AR, and we finally see him get into a car and look for the next target. He spots another player, and it turns out to be an AI, and yet again, after picking up this elimination, he ditches the car. I honestly think he may just not like vehicles. In the next fight, he spots a player inside of a building, and notice how he uses his movement to confuse the opponent. He gets on top of the roof and starts spamming his movement and makes a lot of noise. This is something that may make the other player nervous, but also gives the opponent no way to predict what Thieves is going to do. He slides and jumps off the roof, and while he is in the air, because there is no audio, the player looks absolutely lost and thinks he's still sitting on the roof. Meanwhile, he jumps behind him and finishes off the fight. That simple jump, slide, and aggressive movement showcases how important it is to constantly be moving, which is something Thieves does very well. You want to be the aggressor in situations like this because you do not need the fight to drag out for too long. If Thieves had simply sat on top or waited on a right peek from the opponent, that fight could have dragged on forever, which would attract more players. So always look to see what you can do to make the fight finish faster. Then drives over to the Shogun X Medallion Island, where a player shoots him. As he gets out the car, he uses it for a nasty peek to quickly fry the player with the AR. He then reloads his gun and makes his way up to the island. He spots a player on the roof above him and uses his void to jump on his head. He throws it straight up vertically and cancels it mid-air to land right above him with his shotgun and open up the fight, and this player was caught by surprise, so he was easily able to finish him off. He then spends some time eliminating the Shogun X boss because the infinite sprint and invisibility with the mythic blade will make Thieves 3 times more lethal than he already is, and basically guarantees him the win. He gets off the island and with 5 players remaining proceeds to hunt all of them down. He finds a player, and here's why Thieves with the Shogun X Medallion is a problem. He is untouched in this fight, and all you have to do to be good with the Shogun X Medallion is keep dashing, because when you do so, you activate the sprint, which makes you invisible, and doing so several times throughout the fight makes you impossible to hit, and on top of that, your sprint is absolutely infinite, which is absolutely broken. He runs up on the next player and tries to use the blade attack that is so underrated. So you can send players flying as well as dealing some damage with it. Unfortunately, the other player gets in the car, so he uses the blade to dash to get momentum and slide, making it very hard to get hit, as he also uses his AR to fry the player, finds the last player and rams him with a car. Turns out it was just a bot, so he finishes him off by doing the attack that we just talked about. After analyzing that, the simple answer to why Thieves is so lethal as a fighter is because he's very good at making quick decisions. So for you as the viewer watching, I recommend hopping into your next game, telling yourself to never stop moving. And even if you end up making the wrong decision, making it quick will teach you what's wrong and right, because it is far better than just not making that decision, being indecisive, and dying anyways in the process. Shout out to Thieves for letting me use his gameplay. I'll leave his links in the description. Make sure to check him out if you haven't already. Subscribe to join the most underrated zero build community on YouTube. And if you want to have great movement like Thieves and master that movement this season yourself, consider clicking the video that is on the screen.